I was 34 years old and trying to make a name for myself in freelance travel writing. This was a few months ago, and I thought the open road would inspire me. I drove down Route 66 and ended up at a small diner in a roadside town. The walls were packed with vintage memorabilia. The moment I walked in, something felt off. Maybe it was just the shadows in the corners playing tricks on me. I sat at the counter and ordered a cup of coffee. A long-haul trucker next to me struck up a conversation. His hands were rough and his eyes were tired. He started talking about the 5 unusual rules truckers followed on Route 66. At first, it seemed like just another story, but he lowered his voice and I leaned in closer. "But there's a 6th rule," he said, looking around like he was afraid someone might overhear. A chill ran down my spine, but I didn't think much of it at the time. That night, back at my motel, I wrote the notes down. The unease from the diner lingered. I lay on the bed, wondering if it was just a tale to scare tourists. But I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe it was more than that. Should I heed the unspoken warning? The next day, I drove to a rest stop I had seen earlier. It was a long drive, with the sun scorching down. When I parked, I noticed something strange. Symbols were carved into the wooden benches. A shiver ran down my spine. They looked familiar, but I couldn't place them. I took some pictures and asked a couple of truckers about them when they stopped for gas. They exchanged glances and murmured under their breaths. "Just don't talk about it," one finally said, his voice low. "You wouldn't want to find out what happens if you ask too many questions." My heart raced. I wondered what I was getting myself into. As I continued my journey, I noticed some truckers acting oddly. They looked over their shoulders more than usual. Conversation stopped when I approached. I felt growing tension all around me. Maybe I was imagining it, but I felt eyes on me, even when I was alone. One night, I pulled into another diner. It was late, and the place was nearly empty. I sat down, my stomach churning. I ordered a burger, but didn't touch it. Something didn't feel right. A trucker came in and sat down across from me. His eyes bore into mine. I forced a smile. He just shook his head. "You need to leave," he said, his voice low. "You keep digging, and you won't like what you find." That was when I felt it. A cold presence creeping up my spine. I hadn't meant to dig too deep, but maybe I was already in too deep. My instinct screamed at me to get out, but it was too late. Then a voice. "Why are you still here?" I turned around, but no one was there. The unease wrapped around me like a thick fog. I couldn't shake it off. I knew I had to leave Route 66, but the road behind me faded as the shadows seemed to deepen. I woke up the next morning, dread pooling in my stomach. I needed to get away from Route 66. The stories I had heard, the whispers from the truckers, they felt like a web tightening around me. I decided to head back east, but a part of me wanted to understand what was really going on. After breakfast, I took a detour to a small town I had passed earlier. It was quiet, with the kind of stillness that felt too heavy. I parked in front of a tiny bookstore, hoping to find some local history that could shed light on the strange symbols and the truckers' fears. The bookstore was dimly lit and musty. A bell jingled as I entered. I approached the owner, a woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled into a bun. She looked at me with suspicion, but softened when I asked about local lore. She started showing me a few old books about the history of Route 66. As I flipped through the pages, something caught my eye. A faded photograph showed a group of truckers surrounded by those same symbols carved into the benches I had seen. The caption read, "Ceremony of the Lost Truckers." My pulse quickened. "What do you know about this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. Her face paled. "It's best left alone, dear. They're just stories to keep people away, something to scare the tourists." She turned, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the books on the shelf. "But it's more than that, isn't it?" I pressed. "Those symbols, they mean something." "People go missing sometimes," she murmured, almost to herself. My heart sank. I needed more information. "Do you have anything else on the truckers?" She hesitated, but eventually led me to a back room filled with more old archives. While scanning through the dusty files, I stumbled upon a newspaper clipping from the 1980s. "Local truckers found" was the headline. A group of 5 truckers had disappeared after saying they were headed for an abandoned town off the highway. My stomach twisted. Just then, the bell above the door jingled and heavy footsteps echoed behind me. I turned my head to see a man standing in the doorway. He was tall and broad, with a weathered face that looked like it'd seen too many years behind the wheel. I felt a chill slide down my back. "Don't believe what you read," he said. "You get too curious, and you'll find yourself lost just like them." He stepped closer, and the air shifted. I glanced back at the bookstore owner, but she looked as if she wanted to disappear. Into the shelves. My fight-or-flight instincts kicked in. "Who were those truckers?" I asked, my voice shaking. He stepped closer, eyes narrowing, and whispered, "It's a warning." That was when I saw it. In the man's hand, beneath the cover of his jacket, a knife glinted. Panic surged through me. I had stirred something I couldn't handle. Without thinking, I bolted for the exit. I could hear his heavy footsteps behind me, the bell rattling as I pushed through the door. The open road loomed ahead, but the weight of what I had uncovered pressed down on my chest like a lead weight. I had to escape, but I swore I could hear the whispers of the truckers urging me to turn back. I sprinted to my car, heart racing. The sun was bright, too bright. It felt like a spotlight on me, exposing all my panic for the world to see. I fumbled with my keys, my hands shaking. The man's warning echoed in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in over my head. Finally, the door clicked open, and I jumped inside. I slammed the door shut and locked it, breathing heavily. I had to get out of here. As I turned the ignition, a sense of urgency rushed over me. The man wasn't far behind. I hit the gas and took off down the road, the familiar stretches of Route 66 sliding past in a blur. But I wasn't just running away. I needed to know more about what I had found. That photograph haunted me. The truckers, the symbols, the ceremony. I drove for miles, the asphalt ribboning ahead as the scenery transitioned from downtown to open fields. But the further I went, the heavier my thoughts became. I couldn't let it end like this. I had to find answers, even if it meant confronting more danger. I pulled into a diner that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1950s. The neon sign buzzed faintly as I parked. I hoped to get some coffee and maybe even some information. The bell jingled as I walked in. The diner was nearly empty, save for a few truckers hunched over, cups in hand. I sat at the counter, hoping to blend in. A waitress approached, wiping her hands on a dish rag. "What'll it be?" she asked, her eyes darting around, as if to check for eavesdroppers. "Just coffee, please." I could feel the weight of the other truckers' gazes on me. I needed to gather courage for my questions. As she poured my coffee, I took a breath. "I was in town and heard some strange things about the symbols on Route 66. Can you tell me anything?" Her expression shifted. "Those stories aren't good for business," she said, glancing at the truckers. "You should drop it." "I can't," I insisted, desperation creeping into my voice. "People go missing. What do you know?" The waitress sighed. "Look, there are unspoken rules out here. Things that keep the roads safe for us. You don't want to mess with them." "What rules?" I pushed, determined to get answers. She leaned in, lowering her voice.
Stay on the beaten path, don't wander off to abandoned towns, and never trust anyone who seems too interested in your journey. They might be looking to pull you into their stories." I nodded, absorbing her words. My time on Route 66 had been marked by unnerving encounters, and now it felt like I was walking through a nightmare. Then something caught my attention. The same tall man from the bookstore was standing outside, staring straight at me through the diner's window. My blood ran cold. "Is he—" I started, but before I could finish, she shook her head. "Leave, now." I didn't need further encouragement. Quickly, I paid for my coffee and skittered out the door, my heart racing as the heavy weight of his gaze followed me. As I ran towards my car, I felt a storm of questions surge inside me. I knew I had stumbled onto something deep and dark, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. I hopped in and drove off. But the road seemed to twist and turn with secrets left untold, and I had no idea just how deep this rabbit hole went. I drove away from the diner, the tall man's shadow lingering in my mind like a bad dream. The road stretched ahead, but my thoughts were racing. I had to piece this together. The waitress had mentioned unspoken rules, but her fear was palpable. What were they hiding? After several miles of anxious silence, I passed by a truck stop with a few big rigs parked outside. The flickering lights of the neon sign drew me in. If anyone knew about the disappearances of truckers and the bizarre symbols on Route 66, it had to be the drivers. I parked and stepped out, my heart pounding in rhythm with the thumping of the bass from a nearby radio. Inside, a handful of truckers chatted over coffee, their expressions a mix of camaraderie and caution. I approached the counter and ordered a soda, hoping the bartender might be more forthcoming than the waitress. "Looking for someone specific?" he asked, taking my money but eyeing me closely. "Just some information, actually. I heard stories about symbols and disappearances on Route 66. Do you know anything?" The bartender's demeanor shifted. He paused, glancing over his shoulder. "That's a dangerous topic, kid. You sure you want to dig into that?" I nodded, swallowing my fears. "I have to know. People deserve to hear the truth." He sighed and leaned closer. "All right, just remember, there's a reason we don't talk about it. You ever see that symbol?" He gestured to a crude drawing of a symbol pinned to the wall, surrounded by hastily scribbled notes. My throat tightened as I recognized it from the photograph I'd found. "Yes, I've seen it. What
Does it mean?" I leaned in, my curiosity piqued. "Bad news," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That symbol marks a place where the road is different. It's said to be a gathering for those who disappear, and if you're caught wandering near it, you may find yourself part of their story." His eyes widened, urging me to understand the gravity of it all. Suddenly, I felt a chill run down my spine. The atmosphere shifted, and the chatter of the other truckers grew eerily quiet. That's when I saw him again. The tall man, standing just outside the plate glass window, watching me. Panic surged within. "We need to go," the bartender said urgently, stepping back. "Get out of here now." But I felt rooted in place, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I couldn't just leave, not now. I had to confront this. Gathering my courage, I looked back at the truckers. Who are they? The ones who disappear? The bartender shook his head intensely, cutting off a response. In that moment, the tall man stepped forward, his presence dominating the entrance. I felt the weight of countless eyes on me, my pulse quickening in a frantic rhythm. "Leave her out of this," he said, his voice low but authoritative. A part of me wanted to flee, yet another part needed to understand. Something deep within was awakened, urging me to stay and fight back. But even as I tried to pull my mind together, the diner lights flickered, and everything went dark. I stumbled backward as a darkness enveloped the diner. A sudden crash of glass shattered the stillness outside, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps approaching.
My heart raced. I strained to see anything through the pitch black, but the weight of the silence pressed against my ears. A tense moment passed, then the lights flickered back to life. The tall man stood in the doorway, his silhouette sharp against the light. He surveyed the room, those piercing eyes locking onto me. I felt exposed, caught in his gaze like a deer in headlights. The bartender jumped in front of me, defiant. "You need to leave her alone," he barked, his voice shaky but firm. I could sense the deep-seated fear wrapped around his words. The other truckers sat frozen at their tables, their mugs suspended mid-sip. "I'm here for a reason," the tall man replied, his voice steady and menacing. "She doesn't know what she's getting into." He gestured toward me, and I braced myself as a wave of unease pulsed through the diner. "Maybe I do," I said, trying to inject some bravado into my shaking voice. I was done being afraid. "What is this place? What are you hiding?" The tall man chuckled softly. "Curiosity can be a dangerous thing. Do you really want to know?" His words dripped with condescension, but they held a challenge. "Yes," I said, surprising myself with my own conviction. "Tell me." The tall man surveyed the other
Truckers, his expression shifting to one of irritation. "You've already crossed a line, and I'm not interested in making this harder than it has to be. Just walk away." The tension escalated. I could feel the eyes of the truckers boring into me, yet none of them moved to intervene. The air was thick with an unspoken agreement, like they were all in on something I wasn't. "What are the rules?" I pressed, my voice rising in defiance. "If you want me to leave it alone, then give me a reason. I need to know what that symbol means, what it represents." The tall man shifted his weight, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "You think you can stand here and challenge fate? Walk the line between the known and unknown?" Suddenly, the lights went out again, plunging us into darkness. Panic gripped me. I could hear murmurs, whispers of fear rising from the table behind me. Then the overhead lights flickered back on, and one of the truckers stood, his face pale. "I saw it," he called, pointing toward the entrance. Everyone turned. "Out by the trucks, there's something moving. It wasn't human." I could feel the weight of sudden dread settle over the diner. The tall man's expression shifted to one of steadfast resolve. "I told you, she's not supposed to be here." Before I could react, he lunged toward me, but the bartender intercepted him. "Get out!" he yelled, pushing me back. "Go! I'll hold him off." I took a step back, my heart hammering in fear. Everything started to unravel. The truth was out there, but so was the danger. I turned and fled, sprinting toward the rear exit, my mind racing with questions. Who was the tall man? What rules were they following? As I burst through the door and into the cool night air, I heard a voice scream behind me. "No, you shouldn't have gone out there." I turned just in time to see shadows closing in among the parked trucks. The air was charged with an electric tension, and I could feel unseen eyes watching me from every corner. I ran, but something told me that the answers I sought were not done chasing me yet. The ground felt uneven beneath my feet as I sprinted away from the diner. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself not to look back. I needed to get to a safe place, somewhere I could think. The truck lot stretched before me like a maze, shadows shifting as if they had a life of their own. I dodged between trucks, their metal frames looming like dark sentinels. The chill night air burned in my lungs. My breath came in sharp bursts as I ran harder, driven by fear. Behind me, I could hear footsteps echoing, heavy and relentless. Whoever or whatever was out there was gaining on me. Then I stumbled over something on the ground and went down hard, scraping my palms against the gravel. I gritted my teeth against the pain, pushing myself up. Before I could think, I dove beneath the chassis of a nearby truck and held my breath.
The footsteps approached, slower now, cautious. "Where did she go?" a voice called out. It was the tall man. My heart raced, pounding against my rib cage. I pressed myself flat against the ground, praying he wouldn't see me. "I don't know," another voice said, this one belonging to a trucker. "She was right behind us." "Spread out," the tall man commanded. "She can't have gone far. Look for her." Panic mingled with adrenaline, and I strained to listen as they moved away. The silence only lasted a moment before I heard a low growl, a sound that made my skin crawl. It felt animalistic, primal. Whatever was out there wasn't human. I needed to move. Slowly, I crawled out from under the truck, checking my surroundings. The coast seemed clear. I got to my feet and sprinted toward the far edge of the lot, trying to stay in the shadows. That's when I saw it. A flicker of movement caught my eye, something slinking low to the ground, its form barely discernible in the darkness. My breath hitched as I realized it wasn't human. Long limbs moved unnaturally, and its eyes shone like pale moons. It paused, sniffing the air in my direction. I froze, fear slicing through me. The tall man's warnings echoed in my mind. "You're not supposed to be here." A shiver ran down my spine as I thought of the symbol. His cryptic words were all I had. Suddenly, a flash of light broke the darkness. A truck's headlights blared on, illuminating the space. I dashed behind a crushed car, my heart racing as I crouched low. The tall man and the truckers appeared again, silhouetted against the glow. "This way," he shouted, his voice cutting through the night. "We've got to get to her before it does." I gasped, my chest tightening. Did they know about the creature? Was that what they were so afraid of? Was I now part of whatever twisted game they were playing? I had to know the truth, but now I was more lost than ever. I couldn't stay hiding. I needed answers. Gathering my courage, I peeked around the car and prepared to run toward the group, hoping they would protect me from whatever lurked in the darkness. Just as I stepped out, the growl erupted again, louder this time. It sent a wave of ice through my veins as I turned and my eyes met a creature's fierce gaze. Helplessness washed over me, but there was no turning back. I darted toward the truckers, desperation driving me to confront the unknown. Every rule had a consequence, and now I was caught in the middle. What were the real stakes? I was about to find out. As I reached the men, the tall man turned, and for the first time, I saw fear etched on his...
"Run!" he shouted. "Get to the diner! We can't let it get you!" But in that split second, I realized that running might not be the answer at all. Some things, once discovered, can't just be left behind. The truckers moved quickly, but I could feel the creature hot on my heels. It unleashed a bone-chilling snarl that echoed through the lot, and my legs felt heavy with dread. "What are you waiting for?" the tall man barked at the others. "We don't have time for this." I hesitated, torn between the fear of the creature and the uncertainty of joining the men. Would they protect me, or would I just be putting myself in more danger? But there was no time to think. I had to make a choice. I stumbled forward, joining the group just as the creature lunged, powerful and quick. It swiped at me, narrowly missing my arm. I felt the rush of wind as it passed, and it sent me tumbling to the ground again. My breath caught in my throat, but before I could scream, the tall man pulled me up. "Keep moving," he shouted, pushing me toward the edge of the lot. The other truckers were shouting orders, trying to rally. The blue light from their phones flickered against the darkness, revealing more shapes just beyond the reach of the headlights. "That thing is faster than us," one of them yelled, his voice filled with panic. "We need to find cover." We ran toward the diner, its light shining like a beacon of hope. But the road to safety was fraught with danger. The creature bounded after us, its growl a constant reminder of the peril lurking behind. The tall man grabbed my wrist, hauling me forward.
"You have to trust us. We know how to deal with this." "Deal with what?" I gasped, desperately trying to keep up with their frantic pace. "What is it? What's going on?" "Don't look back. Just keep running," he shouted again. As we approached the diner, I glimpsed the creature in the shadows. Its claws scraped the gravel, and the way it moved was inhuman. It was like something out of a nightmare, not a single ounce of humanity left. We reached the door, and the tall man kicked it open, ushering us inside. The air smelled of stale coffee and panic. A few patrons turned wide-eyed at our sudden entrance. The diner felt too small, too restrictive, as if it couldn't contain the chaos of the night. "Barricade the doors," the tall man bellowed. "Everyone get to the back. Don't let it in." As the truckers pushed tables and chairs against the windows, I stood frozen at the entrance. The reality of my situation washed over me. I was caught in something far bigger than I could understand. Why was this happening? What was that creature? And what did the tall man know that he wasn't telling me? In the storm of voices and chaos, a woman in an apron spoke up. "We've got to distract it. We can't let it focus on one of us." But before they could formulate a plan, a clawed hand smashed through the window, shattering glass everywhere. I jumped back, my heart racing as the creature's eyes burned bright in the sudden chaos. Fear surged anew. The atmosphere thickened with desperation. It was only a matter of time before it got inside. And then, amidst the chaos, the tall man made eye contact with me again. "You have to trust me. There's one rule we can't break." "What rule?" I yelled above the din. His gaze hardened, but his voice softened. "You have to be the distraction." Before I could react, he pushed me toward the back of the diner. That was when I realized the stakes had just gotten higher, and I was more entangled in this nightmare than I ever wanted to be. I stumbled backward, the weight of his words slamming into me. Was he serious? "Me?" I shouted, more incredulous than brave. "You can't be serious." "Just do it," he barked. Panic surged in my chest. I turned, glancing at the others who were scrambling to reinforce their barricade. Their eyes were wide with terror, and I could see the tension rippling through them. They needed me. Whether I liked it or not, I was part of this now. I dashed away from the back room, heart pounding as I fumbled for something, anything, that could serve as a distraction. I spotted a stack of old menus on a nearby table and grabbed them. It felt flimsy, but it was all I had. I took a breath, whispered a silent apology to myself, and swung open the door that led to the diner's exterior. Outside, the creature had pulled its claw back, but it was still lurking, eyes intent on the door. The tall man had risked everything by tossing me out here, and I couldn't let that effort be in vain. I didn't want to die, but I also didn't want to let fear win. I raised the menus above my head and shouted, "Hey, over here!" My voice sounded weak and shaky, but I pushed through the dread pooling in my stomach. Immediately, the creature turned its gaze toward me, those glowing eyes narrowing. My heart raced. I felt like I had become prey. "Come on," I yelled, waving the menus wildly. "Look at me. You want this?" The menus fluttered in the night air like a distress signal. It released a low growl, every inch of it tensed. Then, without warning, it lunged. I barely had time to process its movements before it erupted into a sprint toward me. Instinct took over, and I pivoted, sprinting away into the street. Adrenaline rushed through me. The creature was faster than I had expected, and I felt its breath hot on my back. I could hear the crash of furniture inside the diner as the truckers attempted to keep the monster locked out, but I couldn't focus on that. I had to buy them time. Just ahead, I saw a row of parked trucks lining the lot. I raced towards them, hoping I could slip in and lose the creature. My heart hammered louder with each step, but the shadows crowded around me. I approached the first truck and ducked behind it, crouching low. The night air was thick with tension, and I could hear the creature's claws scraping against the ground. I held my breath, praying it wouldn't find me. Then I heard a crash from the diner. It made me shudder. The distraction had worked, but at what cost? Something told me that the truckers were now fighting for their lives. The creature sniffed the air, and for a moment I thought it had lost my scent. But just as hope surged within me, a shadow loomed over the truck. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the darkness. It was another trucker, a wiry guy with a beanie pulled low over his brow, sprinting toward me with wild eyes. "Get out of here! It's coming!" he shouted, glancing back at the diner. Before I could respond, I heard the unmistakable sound of glass shattering once more. The creature had breached the barricade. "You need to run," the trucker urged, grabbing my arm. One look over my shoulder confirmed my worst fear. I was out of time. My pulse raced as the trucker yanked me to my feet. "This way," he urged, pulling me around the truck. But I hesitated, hearing the other truckers still fighting back at the diner. I couldn't abandon them. "Wait!" I shouted, trying to shake off his grasp. "We can't just leave them." "The hell we can't! That thing is going to tear through them like paper." He glanced back, and I saw fear flash across his face, more powerful than I'd ever felt. "They're done for if we don't move." Finally, I let him pull me forward. Just as I turned to run, I caught a glimpse of the creature bursting through the diner's door. It was monstrous, all sharp edges and snarling teeth, the truckers scrambling helplessly in its wake. My stomach twisted. It shouldn't have to end like this. The trucker led me toward the back of the lot. I didn't even know his name, but we were bound by fear. I followed him through a maze of trucks and trailers, each one casting long shadows in the alleyway. "What's your name?" I gasped, trying to keep pace. "Tom," he shouted back. "Tom, what do we do?" He didn't answer. Instead, he plunged towards an old cab, ripping open a side door and shoving me inside. "Hold on," he ordered as he climbed in after me and slammed the door shut. "Are we just hiding?" I asked, panic surging again. "Gonna buy us some time," Tom replied, adjusting the rearview mirror. I could see the diner faintly. In the reflection, smoke starting to rise into the night sky. A moment passed in silence, but it felt like a lifetime. Suddenly, the roar of the creature echoed outside, sharp against the quiet hum of the engine. The sound sent chills down my spine. I flinched, inching closer to Tom. "What can we do?" I pressed, desperately hoping for a plan. "Wait for the right moment," he said, eyes darting to the door. "If it comes in here." He didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. I could hardly breathe. What if it didn't come in? What if we stayed stuck here forever, waiting? In that moment, I felt a desperate need to know what was happening inside the diner. If they were still alive, if they were fighting. I reached for the door handle, but Tom was quick to grab my wrist. "Don't, it'll sense you." I paused, the weight of his warning sinking in. I glanced at the rear window, anxiety biting through my resolve. Then, through the darkened glass, something flickered. "That's when I saw it," I breathed, my heart stuttering. A shadow moving fast, creeping low and wide, stalking the perimeter of the trucks, searching for us. "Damn it, we need to go." Tom slammed a fist against the dashboard, rattling me even more. But something inside me conflicted. I couldn't escape while they were still fighting. Before I could process my next move, the windshield shattered under a powerful impact. The creature was clawing its way toward us. I screamed as shards rained down, and Tom's eyes widened in horror. It was here. We were trapped. "Run!" he shouted, but the command felt almost futile. I was paralyzed by fear. Then I thought of the truckers still inside. My heart raced again, this time fueled by a glimmer of resolve. I had to help them. I had to become more than just prey in this nightmare. As the creature thrust its head through the window, I made my choice. In that moment, I knew I couldn't stay hidden any longer. I pushed my way past Tom, whose protests fell on deaf ears. I wouldn't be a bystander. I had to face my fear. The creature snarled, its breath rancid and hot. I barely thought as I launched myself out of the cab, fear morphing into adrenaline. It reacted instantly, shifting its focus from the shattered windshield to me. "Distract it!" I shouted to Tom, not waiting to see if he understood. I darted around the truck, keeping my movements unpredictable as I looked for something, anything, I could use to fend it off. The world blurred as I sprinted, but I caught sight of a metal toolbox by another truck. With trembling hands, I grabbed it, hefting its weight. The creature growled again, stalking me in slow, deliberate strides, its glowing eyes set on its prey. I could feel the fear of the truckers inside the diner, fueling my movements, pushing me past the revulsion and dread
that filled my stomach. "Hey!" I screamed, brandishing the toolbox to get the creature's attention. "Over here, you ugly bastard!" I raised the toolbox as high as I could and threw it to the side, hoping to make it look like I was fleeing. The distraction worked. Its gaze snapped toward the clang of metal hitting the ground. It surged forward, its claws slashing through the air. I dove for the nearest cover, praying it would be enough. The strength of its movements threw up debris from the pavement, and I could feel the heat radiating off its massive frame. My instincts kicked in, and I realized that its movements were erratic, almost desperate in the face of its growing frustration. I had one chance. Call it reckless, but it was better than cowering inside the truck. Slowly, I crawled toward another toolbox, tucked against the base of a trailer, hoping it would shield me. All the while, my mind raced. What could I do next if I got away? Just as I secured the toolbox, I heard the clamor of chaos behind me, yelling, glass shattering, the unmistakable sound of a fight breaking out again in the diner. My heart sank for Tom and the others. The creature had come here for a reason. It craved fear. "Now!" I shouted to myself, my pulse racing. I had to do something, anything. I was stalling in fear. I grabbed a stick from the ground, using it to push myself back up. I charged at the creature, just as it refocused on the diner. "Get away from them!" I hollered, and my voice echoed into the cool night. The creature turned, its eyes narrowing again, and in that moment, I lunged, jabbing at it with the stick, aiming for anything vulnerable. It recoiled, surprised, hissing like a serpent, the sound reverberating in the stillness. Then I saw the tall man emerge from the diner's shadows, his steady presence oddly reassuring. Without thinking, he grabbed my arm, nodding to the side of the diner. "A distraction leads to an escape," he said, eyes flicking to the creature. "You going to partner with me or back out now?" I nodded fervently, bracing for action. Together, we had to create an opening for the truckers inside. "On 3, he instructed, we both go for the flanks. 1, 2, 3. We charged in unison, our momentum rushing against the creature as it turned to snap at the tall man. I darted toward its other side, trying to gain its attention again. As it turned to me, I felt exhilarated and terrified. We were all in this together, fueled by desperation. "The diner!" he shouted, urging me on as I instinctively reached for whatever I could use. We sprinted into the diner's parking lot, weaving between the chaos erupting around us. My heart thrummed wildly, each beat echoing the thought of escape. It was now or never. I saw the truckers spilling out in a mad dash, most making it to safety. But fear clouded my determination. I glimpsed the tall man signaling one last distraction as he hurled a beer bottle at the monster. The bottle shattered, and the creature whipped around, howling in rage. That was our moment. "Go! Go!" I shouted, pushing the others forward as the creature refocused on me. My fate dangled in a raw balance between primal fear and instinct. Then everything came crashing back. The diner's door was open, light spilling out like the glow of safety itself. "Get to the truck, now!" I yelled, guiding the last truckers as the tall man held the creature at bay. And I would follow them into the light. As we dashed past the threshold, I heard one last ear-piercing roar behind us. I didn't dare turn back, even as the shadows closed in. The truckers leaped into the cab just as I swung the door shut behind me. Despite the chaos, I could hear the rattle of fear in their voices as they piled in beside me.
I took a moment to breathe, but dread gripped me. That darkness still lingered outside, creeping in the corners of my mind. We started the engine, the truck rumbling to life just as the distant growl of the creature reverberated behind us. As we sped away from the diner, away from that malevolent being, I felt something shift inside me. I didn't know what I had stumbled upon or why it all mattered so deeply. And as the night closed in around the fading taillights of the diner, there was no guarantee I wouldn't see those terrible shadows again. All I knew was the road stretched on with all its secrets, where every journey could lead to new discoveries, just like this one. I may have escaped, but in my gut, I knew that the danger was waiting. It always would be. I could never return to the carefree days of travel writing. The truth didn't disappear. It simmered beneath the surface, ever present, just like the creatures lurking in the darkness. I turned on the radio, the static a bitter reminder of the unknown. Sometimes I still think back to that night, to the choices I made and the lives entwined with my own. I'd left the physical danger behind, but the questions remained unanswered. What were the true stakes? Who controlled the darkness, and who would come next? I gripped the steering wheel tighter, prepared to meet whatever lurked ahead on the road.